Steve Bannon, former chief strategist for Donald Trump, has been convicted of contempt for refusing to appear before Congress to give testimony. Note here that he refused to even show up, which is something you can't do. Even if he was going to plead the Fifth Amendment, he has to actually show up and plead the Fifth in person. That's the standard process in Congress. He didn't do that. He didn't show up and plead the Fifth. He just didn't show up. You can't do that. You can't not show up. They're missing 3 members of the minority. Congress should be required by amendment to actually follow the rules they make. Yeah, this is the thing, though. Say they don't have to. Because Congress is the sole judge of its own rules. So that's easy. Like, if you want to ask, is Congress in compliance with its own rules, ask Congress. Because the Constitution says that. It's in the Constitution. So each house is in charge of its own rules. So if the rules say, okay, we're supposed to have so many members of the majority and so many members of the minority, as long as the House itself is the one that creates the committee, they don't have to follow their own rules because they're the House's rules, and they can waive their own rules. So yeah, it's a total non-starter. The rules are only binding on the House as long as they want them to be, because they're the sole judge of their own rules. So yeah.
The House resolution that created this J6 committee is House Resolution 503. And what the person Uncivil Law is replying to is saying the House didn't abide by its own rules, so therefore the whole thing should be invalid.
They're missing 3 members of the minority. Congress should be required by amendment to actually follow the rules they make.
And that is a legitimate take. Uncivil Law says the Constitution states the House can make its own rules.
Yeah, this is the thing, though. Say they don't have to. Because Congress is the sole judge of its own rules.
He's right to a certain extent, but I don't think he understands the separation of powers. Let's look at the rules first to see what are we talking about. This was already challenged by the Republican National Committee. They challenged in court the legitimacy of the J6 committee. A Trump-appointed judge ruled against them. But what happened is clear here. The Resolution 503 states that 8 Democrats and 5 GOP members should be on the committee. We only have 7 Dems and 2 GOPs. The House resolution also stated that a GOP ranking member, that's a senior member of the GOP, should be on the committee with tenure. There is no GOP ranking member on the committee. So they've completely violated their rules. Keep in mind, if they want to rewrite the rules, they could rewrite the rules. There's nothing stopping them saying, hey, we'll stop this committee. We'll draw up another set of rules and have the House vote on it. The purpose of that is these people represent you. So they voted on something that they're not abiding by to provide cover to make it seem like it's more impartial than it really is. Uncivil Law is completely right. The House can do whatever it wants. It doesn't even have to redraft these rules. It can just do whatever it wants, as long as it stays in the House. The Senate doesn't even respect what the House does, much less the executive branch or the judicial branch have to. So the problem now comes at they did a subpoena. Here's the letter for the subpoena. This is the start of the letter in September of last year they sent to Steve Bannon. It says, pursuant to the authorities set forth in the House Resolution 503, what I just was talking about there, this is from Benny Thompson. Benny Thompson, the chairman of the J6 committee, said that their authority to call Steve Bannon to testify was based on HR 503, the same resolution I just showed you they are not abiding by the rules of. So uncivil law, why are they referencing the House Resolution 503 if it doesn't matter? Because they know it matters when they go outside of the House of Representatives. So they issued a subpoena. They can't bring charges against Steve Bannon because the only reason that they have a subpoena is for legislative purposes, not any type of criminal. The House can't bring criminal charges. So they go to the DOJ, which is in the executive branch. The DOJ can look at the House and say, no, we don't care what you said. We're not pressing charges. They don't have to listen to the House just because the House didn't. If it doesn't even matter, even if the House followed the rules. Even if the House followed the rules, the executive branch doesn't have to press charges against Steve Bannon.
It is very common for people to commit contempt, and almost none of them are prosecuted because almost all the contempts that occur are ones that are in line with the current administration. So people commit contempt of Congress on a not infrequent basis. Almost none of them are prosecuted because almost all of the ones that we're talking about are ones the current administration likes. And so the current administration is not going to prosecute it. It's a violation of the law, but of course the law has to be enforced by the executive, which they're of course not going to do. And so the vast majority of these are not enforced for purely political reasons, which unfortunately is within the province of the executive, because they're the ones that get to make prosecutorial decisions.
And it's the same with the judicial branch. That's the whole reason the powers are separated. The judicial branch is not going to stop the J6 hearing and say, whoa, we have to interrupt these hearings because you didn't follow your rules. That's what the Constitution means. The House has to deal with their own rules. But once they step outside of the House, bring charges from the executive branch brings it to the judicial branch. The judicial branch can look at whatever the hell they want to look at. Now the judge did not in this case. And that's why I think Steve Bannon should and will take this to the Supreme Court, because you for damn sure know the Supreme Court will look at this and say this is a kangaroo court. You can keep the kangaroo court within the House, but you can't bring any charges to people based on this nonsense. Even if they follow the rules, the Supreme Court could look at it, or any part of the judicial branch could look at it and say, nah, I don't think you're doing this we don't respect what you're doing. We don't think you're doing it for legislative purposes. No, he's innocent. Or we're not going along with this. That's why I love how our government's set up. It's so simple that someone like me, I'm not a lawyer. I can look at uncivil law, who is a lawyer, and tell him he's just full of nonsense. He's full of crap, because they made this really simple for the common person to understand. Let me know what you think.